What happens when two of entertainment's biggest personalities clash on live television in a way that nobody saw coming? Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive celebrity interviews ever recorded, where Paris Hilton and Kelly Clarkson went from friendly conversation to a loud confrontation in a matter of minutes. This is the story of how a routine promotional interview turned into a television moment that had viewers' jaws on the floor, producers scrambling, and social media absolutely losing its mind. If you want to see more shocking celebrity stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what celebrity confrontation you'd like me to cover next. The Kelly Clarkson show was having what seemed like a perfectly normal day. Paris Hilton was scheduled to appear as a guest to promote her latest business venture, a new fragrance line that was generating significant buzz in the beauty industry. The atmosphere in the studio was relaxed, with crew members going about their usual pre-show preparations. Kelly, known for her warm interviewing style and ability to make guests feel comfortable, had prepared what she thought would be a conversation about entrepreneurship, fame, and Paris's evolution from reality TV star to business mogul. As the cameras began rolling, Kelly opened with her trademark enthusiasm. "Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm here with the incredible Paris Hilton, entrepreneur, icon, and someone who really needs no introduction. Paris, thank you so much for being here today." Paris, perfectly poised as always, smiled graciously and responded, "Thank you for having me, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here and talk about all the amazing things I've been working on." The interview started exactly as planned. Kelly asked about the new fragrance collection, and Paris launched into what seemed like a well-rehearsed pitch about the inspiration behind the scents, the months of development that went into creating the perfect formulas, and her excitement about bringing something fresh to the market. "This collection really represents a new chapter for me," Paris explained, her voice carrying that familiar blend of confidence and calculated charm. "I've put so much of myself into these fragrances, and I think people are going to be really surprised by the sophistication and complexity of what we've created." Kelly nodded along, asking follow-up questions about the creative process and the business side of launching a fragrance line in such a competitive market. For the first several minutes, everything was proceeding smoothly. The conversation flowed naturally, with both women seeming comfortable and engaged. Paris shared anecdotes about working with perfumers. Kelly made relatable comments about her own experiences with fragrance, and the studio audience responded with appropriate laughter and applause at all the right moments. But then Kelly decided to shift the conversation in a direction that would prove to be a critical mistake. "Paris, I have to ask you about something that I think a lot of people are curious about. Over the years, you've been very open about your experiences, your growth, and your journey. But there's something that's always fascinated me about your story, and I hope you don't mind me bringing it up." Paris's smile remained in place, but something subtle shifted in her demeanor. Her posture straightened almost imperceptibly, and her eyes took on a more guarded quality. "Of course, Kelly, what would you like to know?" Kelly leaned forward slightly, adopting what she probably thought was a compassionate and understanding tone. "I've been thinking a lot about authenticity lately, especially in our industry. And I'm curious about your thoughts on the difference between the public persona that we all create for ourselves and who we really are behind the scenes, because I think you're someone who has really mastered the art of creating a brand around yourself." The question hung in the air for a moment. Paris tilted her head slightly, considering her response. "Well, I think authenticity is really important, Kelly, and I've always tried to be genuine with my fans and the people who support me. But I also think there's nothing wrong with having different sides to your personality and showing different aspects of yourself in different contexts." Kelly nodded, but then pressed further. "Right, absolutely. But I guess what I'm getting at is, when you look back at your career, at some of the earlier reality shows and the whole dumb blonde persona that became so famous, do you ever feel like that was authentic to who you really are? Or was that more of a calculated business decision?" The studio fell unusually quiet. Paris's smile became more fixed, more strained. "I think that's a pretty personal question, Kelly. And I'm not sure it's really relevant to what we're here to talk about today, which is my new fragrance line and the work I'm doing now." But Kelly, perhaps sensing that she was on to something that could make for compelling television, didn't back down. Instead, she doubled down. "I'm just curious because I think there are a lot of young women who look up to you, and I wonder if you have any regrets about playing into certain stereotypes, even if it was successful from a business standpoint." Paris's demeanor shifted noticeably. Her voice took on a cooler tone. Kelly, I think you're making some assumptions about my career and my choices that aren't really fair or accurate. I've always been in control of my narrative, and I've never done anything that I wasn't comfortable with or that didn't align with my goals. Kelly seemed to realize that she might be venturing into dangerous territory, but rather than retreating, she attempted to clarify her position. Oh, I'm not criticizing you at all. I think what you've accomplished is incredible. I'm just wondering if you feel like the media and the public ever forced you into a box that maybe wasn't completely representative of who you are. Paris's response was measured, but carried an unmistakable edge. I think the media has certainly had its own narrative about me over the years, and not all of it has been accurate or fair. But I've never felt forced into anything, Kelly. Kelly's face flushed slightly as she realized the gravity of what Paris had just said. The accusation hung heavy in the studio air, and Kelly knew she needed to respond carefully. Paris, that's not what I meant at all. I have nothing but respect for your intelligence and your business acumen. I was simply acknowledging how your public image has evolved over the years. But Paris wasn't having it. Her voice carried a steely determination that caught everyone off guard. No, Kelly, that's exactly what you meant. And it's exactly the kind of condescending attitude that I've dealt with my entire career. You and everyone else in the media have this narrative that I was some kind of airhead who got lucky and now I've somehow become legitimate. It's insulting and I'm tired of it. The studio audience was dead silent now. This had gone far beyond the typical awkward interview moment. Kelly tried to regain control of the situation. Paris, I think there might be a misunderstanding here. I've always admired your business sense. The Simple Life was brilliant television. Your hotels, your perfumes, your DJ career. Everything you've built is impressive. Paris leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed, clearly unimpressed with Kelly's attempt at damage control. You admired The Simple Life. Really? Because 5 minutes ago you were calling it part of a dumb blonde persona that I apparently need to have regrets about. You can't have it both ways, Kelly. Either you respect what I've done, or you don't, but don't sit here and patronize me. Kelly's voice took on a slightly defensive tone. I wasn't patronizing you. I was asking legitimate questions about the pressures that women in entertainment face and how they navigate public perception. These are conversations I have with guests all the time. No, you don't, Paris shot back immediately. You don't ask male entrepreneurs if they regret their early business decisions. You don't ask them if they feel like they had to play dumb to be successful. You don't question their authenticity or suggest that their success is somehow surprising. But apparently, when it comes to me, everything I've accomplished needs to be justified or explained away. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Kelly looked visibly shaken, clearly realizing that this interview had spiraled completely out of her control. She glanced briefly at her producers off camera, as if seeking guidance, before turning back to Paris. That's not fair, Paris. I ask challenging questions to all of my guests because I think my audience deserves substantive conversations. Paris let out a laugh that was anything but amused. Challenging questions? Kelly, you basically just spent 10 minutes implying that my entire early career was fake and asking me if I'm embarrassed by it. How is that challenging? That's just rude. And the fact that you're doubling down instead of acknowledging that maybe you crossed a line tells me everything I need to know about how this conversation is going to go. Kelly's voice rose slightly, her own frustration beginning to show. I think you're mischaracterizing what I said. I was trying to have a meaningful conversation about authenticity and growth, which are topics that I think are important and that many people can relate to. Meaningful conversation? Paris's voice was incredulous. Kelly, you invited me here to talk about my new fragrance line, and instead you decided to psychoanalyze my career choices from 20 years ago. How is that meaningful? How is that relevant to anything we're supposed to be discussing today? The audience was watching this exchange like a tennis match, their heads turning back and forth between the two women. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed fascinated by the raw emotion on display. Kelly tried a different approach, her voice softer now. Look, Paris, I think we both got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we take a step back and talk about your fragrance line, which I know you're really excited about. But Paris wasn't ready to let it go. No, Kelly, we can't just take a step back. You don't get to insult someone and then pretend it didn't happen when they call you out on it. You made assumptions about me, about my intelligence, about my career, and about my motivations. And when I corrected you, you tried to gaslight me into thinking I misunderstood what you were saying. Kelly's composure was clearly fraying. I wasn't trying to gaslight you. I was trying to clarify what I meant, because I think there was a miscommunication. There was no miscommunication, Paris responded firmly. You said exactly what you meant to say. You just didn't expect me to push back on it. You thought I would just sit here and smile and nod while you questioned my authenticity and suggested that I should have regrets about choices that made me successful and gave me the platform I have today. Kelly took a deep breath, clearly trying to reset the conversation one more time. Paris, I respect you enormously. I respect your business acumen. I respect your success. And I respect the empire you've built. If anything I said came across as disrespectful, that wasn't my intention. Paris studied Kelly's face for a moment before responding. You know what, Kelly? I appreciate you saying that, but the problem is, this isn't about your intentions. It's about impact. And the impact of what you said was to minimize my intelligence and my agency, whether you meant to or not. And I've spent too many years building my brand and my business to sit here and let that slide. Kelly nodded slowly, seeming to genuinely consider Paris's words. I can understand that, and I can see how my questions might have felt dismissive, even though that wasn't what I was trying to do. I guess I'm just curious about how you've navigated the challenges of being a woman in business, especially when you started so young. For a moment, it seemed like the conversation might find its way back to safer ground. Paris's posture relaxed slightly. Look, Kelly, I'm happy to talk about the challenges women face in business. I'm happy to talk about ageism and sexism and all of the obstacles that I've had to overcome. But the way you were framing it suggested that I was somehow complicit in my own objectification, and that's just not accurate. Kelly leaned forward, seemingly encouraged by this shift. That's a really important distinction, and I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. I think there's a big difference between someone choosing to play with certain images or stereotypes strategically versus having those things imposed on them. Paris nodded. Exactly. And I've always been very strategic about my image and my brand. Everything I've done has been calculated and purposeful. I've never been a victim of my own success, and I've never been manipulated by anyone in my B. Kelly's eyes widened as she realized she had stepped into another minefield. I just meant women who started in reality television and entertainment at a young age. I didn't mean anything negative by it. Paris's voice turned ice cold. So now you're categorizing me as a type of woman. Kelly, do you hear yourself right now? You're literally doing exactly what I was talking about. You're putting me in a box, making assumptions about who I am based on how I got started, and then acting like I should be grateful that I managed to overcome being that type of woman. Kelly was visibly flustered now, her hands gesturing as she tried to explain. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that the entertainment industry can be particularly challenging for women, especially young women who are in the public eye. And I think the way you've navigated those challenges is admirable. Stop, Paris said firmly, holding up her hand. Just stop talking for a second and listen to what you're actually saying. You keep trying to frame this as some kind of compliment, but what you're really saying is that you're surprised I turned out to be successful and intelligent. You're surprised that someone like me, whatever that means, could build a legitimate business empire. The studio was so quiet that you could hear the hum of the cameras. Kelly's voice was strained as she responded. Paris, I think you're putting words in my mouth. I've never questioned your intelligence or your legitimacy as a businesswoman. Paris laughed, but it was a sharp, bitter sound. Kelly, you literally asked me if I regret playing dumb. You asked me if I felt forced into stereotypes. You questioned whether my early persona was authentic. How is that not questioning my intelligence and legitimacy? Kelly's face was red now, and her voice took on a defensive edge. Because I was asking about the pressures that the industry puts on women, not making judgments about your choices. There's a difference between acknowledging that systemic issues exist and blaming individuals for navigating those systems. But that's exactly what you were doing, Paris fired back. You were asking me to justify my choices, to explain why I made decisions that were successful for me, to essentially apologize for the way I built my career. And now you're trying to hide behind this idea that you were asking about systemic issues when really you were just being judgmental. Kelly's composure finally cracked completely. You know what, Paris? I was trying to give you credit for being smart and strategic, and you're attacking me for it. I was trying to acknowledge that you've evolved and grown, and apparently that's offensive to you. I don't know what you want from me here. Paris stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard, including the camera operators who scrambled to adjust their shots. What I want, Kelly, is for you to stop acting like my success is some kind of miracle that needs to be explained. What I want is for you to stop treating me like I'm a curiosity instead of a peer. What I want is for you to show me the same respect you would show any other successful entrepreneur who came on your show. Kelly remained seated, but her voice was raised now, too. I do respect you, Paris, but I also think you're being incredibly unfair right now. I've been nothing but professional, and I've tried to apologize when you felt I crossed the line. But you keep attacking me no matter what I say. Professional? Paris's voice was incredulous. Kelly, you ambushed me. You invited me here under the pretense of talking about my business, and instead you decided to conduct some kind of therapy session about my career choices. That's not professional. That's exploitative. The audience was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some were whispering to each other. Others were pulling out their phones. The producers off camera were clearly in crisis mode, probably debating whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. Kelly stood up now, too, matching Paris's energy. I did not ambush you. I asked you thoughtful questions about your career and your experiences. If you can't handle being asked about your own choices and your own journey, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. That was the line that broke everything. Paris's face went white with fury. If I can't handle being asked about my choices, Kelly, I've been in this business longer than you have. I've built multiple successful companies. I've survived scandals that would have destroyed other people. And I've reinvented myself more times than I can count. Don't you dare tell me what I can and cannot handle. Kelly's voice was shaking with emotion now. Then why are you so defensive about answering basic questions about your career? Why can't you just have a normal conversation about your experiences without turning it into some kind of attack on me? Because they weren't basic questions, Paris shot back. They were loaded questions designed to make me look stupid or shallow or regretful. And when I refused to play along, you got upset. You wanted me to give you some kind of redemption narrative where I admit that I used to be dumb and now I'm smart, or that I used to be fake and now I'm real. Well, I'm not going to do that because it's not true. Kelly was clearly at her wit's end. I never wanted you to say you were dumb. I never wanted you to say you were fake. I wanted to have an honest conversation about the challenges women face in entertainment and how you've overcome them. Paris gathered her purse from beside her chair, her movements sharp and deliberate. An honest conversation. Kelly, you've been dishonest from the moment you started asking me about authenticity while sitting there with that fake sympathetic expression on your face. You've been dishonest about your motivations. You've been dishonest about your questions. And you've been dishonest about your intentions. Kelly's voice cracked slightly. That's not fair. Paris, I came into this interview with nothing but respect for you and genuine curiosity about your story. Paris turned to face Kelly directly, her voice deadly serious. No, Kelly. You came into this interview with preconceived notions about who I am and what my story should be. And when I didn't fit into your narrative, you got frustrated. Well, I'm not here to make your job easier, and I'm not here to validate your assumptions about me. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every person in the studio was watching this confrontation with a mixture of fascination and horror. This had gone so far beyond a normal interview that it felt like witnessing something deeply personal and painful. Kelly made one final attempt to salvage the situation. Paris, please, can we just take a breath and start over? I clearly misunderstood what you were comfortable discussing, and I apologize for that, but walking away isn't going to solve anything. Paris paused at the edge of the stage area, turning. Kelly's voice became desperate, almost pleading. Paris, that's not true. I didn't make up my mind about anything. I was genuinely trying to understand your perspective and give you a platform to share your story. Paris shook her head, her expression a mixture of disappointment and disgust. My story, Kelly. My story isn't some cautionary tale about a young woman who got lost in fame and then found herself. My story is about someone who knew exactly what she wanted from day one and had the intelligence and determination to get it. But that's not the story you wanted to hear, is it? Kelly's hands were shaking now as she tried one more time. Please, Paris. I think we're both getting emotional here. Maybe we should take a commercial break and collect ourselves, and then we can finish the interview properly. Paris's laugh was cold and final. There's nothing emotional about this, Kelly. This is me being perfectly clear about who I am and what I will and will not tolerate, and I will not sit here and let you disrespect me on your show while pretending it's journalism. Kelly's voice broke slightly. I wasn't disrespecting you. I was trying to have a real conversation with you, Not just some fluff promotional interview. A real conversation. Paris's voice was full of contempt. Now, Kelly, a real conversation would have involved you actually listening to my answers instead of just waiting for your turn to ask the next loaded question. A real conversation would have involved you treating me like an equal instead of like a specimen under a microscope. The studio audience was completely silent, watching this meltdown with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for car accidents. You could see phones being raised throughout the audience as people started recording what was clearly going to become a viral moment. Kelly made one last desperate attempt to maintain her authority as the host. Paris, I understand you're upset, but walking off my show isn't going to accomplish anything except making this situation worse for both of us. Paris stopped dead in her tracks and turned around slowly, her eyes blazing. Worse for both of us. Kelly, this situation is only bad for you. I came here in good faith to promote my business, and you turned it into an ambush. You're the one who has to explain to your producers why your guest walked out. You're the one who has to explain to your audience why you couldn't conduct a simple interview without insulting your guest. Kelly's composure finally shattered completely. I didn't insult you. I asked you legitimate questions about your career. If you can't handle that level of scrutiny, then maybe you shouldn't be putting yourself out there as a public figure. The words hung in the air like a slap. The entire studio seemed to collectively hold its breath. Paris's expression went completely blank for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was quiet, but deadly. There it is. There's the real Kelly Clarkson. Underneath all that fake warmth and pretend empathy, you're just another person who doesn't deserve to be taken seriously. Kelly realized immediately that she had gone too far, but it was too late. Paris, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry. I'm upset. I didn't mean to say that. Paris's voice was like ice. No, Kelly, you meant exactly what you said. And you know what? Thank you for finally being honest. At least now I know where you really stand. With that, Paris turned and walked toward the exit. Her heels clicked against the studio floor with each determined step. Kelly called after her. Paris, please don't leave like this. We can work this out. But Paris didn't even slow down. She reached the edge of the stage area and paused just long enough to address the audience directly, her voice carrying clearly through the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you had to witness this. I came here today to talk about my new fragrance line and my business, but apparently your host had other plans. Kelly's voice was frantic now. Paris, don't do this, please. Paris looked back at Kelly one final time. You know what, Kelly? I've spent my entire career being underestimated by people like you. People who think they know my story better than I do. People who think my success needs to be explained or justified. Well, I don't owe you or anyone else an explanation for who I am or what I've accomplished. And I certainly don't owe you the satisfaction of sitting here and taking your condescending questions with a smile. And with that, Paris Hilton walked off the Kelly Clarkson show stage, leaving behind a stunned host, a shocked audience, and what would become one of the most talked about interview disasters in recent television history. Kelly stood there for a moment, seemingly unsure of what to do next. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her obvious distress. Finally, she turned to the audience, her voice shaky and uncertain. Well, folks, I guess we'll be right back after this commercial break. But the damage was done. The studio was buzzing with whispered conversations. Phones were out recording everything, and social media was already starting to explode with clips and reactions. What was supposed to be a simple promotional interview had turned into a masterclass in how quickly things can go wrong when assumptions meet reality, when preconceptions clash with truth, and when two strong personalities refuse to back down. The producers scrambled to cut to commercial. But everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. This was a moment that revealed something deeper about celebrity respect and the power dynamics that exist between hosts and guests, between those who ask the questions and those who are expected to answer them. In the end, Paris Hilton's walkout wasn't just about defending herself against one host's problematic questions. It was about drawing a line in the sand and saying that success doesn't require you to diminish yourself for anyone's comfort. Intelligence doesn't need to be proven through humility, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to play a game that was rigged against you from the start. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen a celebrity interview go this wrong before? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking celebrity stories and behind-the-scenes drama that you won't see anywhere else.